An unnatural energy seemed to permeate the air, something different from the familiar hum of machines. The young tech priest Arcane felt the shift, a tremor running through his remaining flesh and implanted circuits. A cold dampness filled the hangar, despite the constant activity of reactors and generators. He paused for a moment, his mechadendrites twitching, as a distant voice seemed to whisper in the darkest binary he had ever heard. Arcane recalled his early training in the forges of Styges Octarius. The machine spirit had been described as a benevolent entity, a fragment of the Omnissiah guiding and protecting the servants of the Imperium. The prayers and liturgical chants of his apprenticeship still echoed faintly in his mind, a distant memory from a time when he had believed unquestioningly in the doctrine. And yet, even then, there had been whispers of rebellious spirits, entities that refused the blessing of faith. Legends, a superior had once told him, tales conjured by the weak to justify their failures. The machine spirit responds only to discipline and devotion. Now, standing before the Thunderhawk, Arcane wondered if those legends contained a sliver of truth. He felt his faith falter under the weight of the inexplicable. The teachings of the Mechanicus spoke of harmony between man and machine, but the thing now infesting this vessel was anything but harmonious. It was a parasite, a desecration of the sanctity of code. The Thunderhawk didn't respond immediately to his efforts. Its lights remained off, its body cold and lifeless. Yet, deep within its cybernetic mind, Arcane sensed resistance, a refusal that didn't solely belong to the machine spirit. It was as if a shadow had crept into the circuits, an aberrant presence distorting every whisper of code. His enhanced eyes flickered, revealing irregular streams of data cascading through his vision. Strange symbols, unrecognizable even to the Mechanicus archives, flashed amidst the sacred binary. They pulsed with an erratic rhythm, making Arcane's remaining organic eye water. He held his breath as a faint scent of burnt incense filled the air, though none had been lit. It was as if the hangar itself had exhaled something ancient and hostile.
Machine spirit,
Arcane whispered uncertainly, sending soothing data pulses.
Reveal yourself. Speak to me.
Instead of a response, he heard a hiss, a screeching sound that seemed to originate within his own mind.
I've seen you, little servant.
The voice said. It didn't belong to the Thunderhawk. It belonged to no one. The shadows in the hangar shifted, bending reality for a moment too long. For an instant, Arcane thought he saw a figure, a skeletal silhouette with glowing eyes, standing at the edge of the hangar. When he blinked, it was gone. But the echo of its presence lingered, an oppressive weight pressing on his chest. Arcane shook his head, trying to focus on his task. With trembling hands, he brought a servo wrench to the main engine. At his touch, a jolt of energy surged through his mechanical arm. It wasn't just a defensive response, it was punishment. Resting his hand, Arcane attempted to initiate a purification cycle, reciting an ancient litany of correction. His mechadendrites moved with precision, attempting to input and override manually.
Sacred engine,
he murmured.
Accept my touch and let yourself be guided to redemption.
At first, it seemed to work. The Thunderhawk trembled slightly, its systems rebooting, and a faint hum filled the air. But almost immediately, the hum shifted into a low, sinister groan. The hangar lights began to flicker, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Suddenly, the main mechanism convulsed. A burst of scalding steam erupted from a nearby conduit, hurling Arcane backward. He crashed into a pile of tools that clattered noisily to the floor.
Attention. Critical anomaly detected. System integrity compromised. Unauthorized presence identified.
One of the Thunderhawk's monitors blinked, but the letters warped, twisting into symbols no Mechanicus language was ever meant to contain. His mechadendrites recoiled, sensing danger, but Arcane did not relent.
Acknowledge your servant, Sacred Engine,
he shouted, his voice trembling with both desperation and defiance as he struggled to his feet.
I am Arcane, sworn devotee of the Omnissiah, chosen to guide and protect your essence. By the sacred scrolls of the Mechanicus and the eternal wisdom of the Omnissiah, I implore you to awaken. Cast out this corruption that seeks to desecrate your purity, and hear the voice of your loyal servant. Respond to me, Sacred Engine, or let your silence shatter the bond between flesh and machine, dooming us both.
This time, the Thunderhawk answered, but not in the way Arcane had hoped. Its frame vibrated violently, emitting a guttural roar that filled the hangar. The lumens on the vessel activated, but not with their usual amber glow. Instead, an intense spectral red flooded the space, casting shadows that seemed alive. The binary code Arcane had input began to return, but it was chaotic and unnatural. The lines of sacred language fractured into grotesque verses and blasphemous words. The sounds emanating weren't mechanical. They were organic, primal. Arcane froze, paralyzed by fear. Slowly he turned, feeling as though invisible eyes were watching him, their gaze piercing his armor and flesh alike. A voice echoed through the craft's vox, distorted and dripping with malice.
Your prayers are meaningless, Tech Priest. You are no savior. You are next.
The Tech Priest attempted to react, sending a full disconnect impulse, but it was too late. The Thunderhawk rose a few centimeters off the ground, one wing tilting to crash into a nearby wall, yet it didn't stop. Its engines vibrated on the verge of collapse, accelerating and stalling in a rhythm that almost seemed to speak. Laugh, even. Arcane stumbled backward, tripping over a discarded servo skull that emitted a distorted vox chant as it rolled away. The Thunderhawk's laughter deepened, and the hangar seemed to twist around it, the walls stretching and warping like molten iron.
Faith will not save you.
The voice taunted, now coming from all directions at once. With a cry, Arcane grabbed the sacred seal hanging around his neck and pressed it against the Thunderhawk's hull, reciting an exorcism litany. The binary began to flow again, but the sound persisted. The shadows thickened, closing in, and within them, Arcane saw something he wished he hadn't. Faces. Dozens, hundreds of tormented faces, men and women who were once alive, their souls trapped in the machine's eternal cycle.
Help us,
they whispered, their eyes devoid of hope. The Thunderhawk stopped abruptly, releasing a final static hiss. Its lumens extinguished, plunging the hangar into an unnatural silence. But the silence wasn't comforting. It was the kind that follows a predator's retreat, not its defeat. Arcane stood frozen, the seal still clutched in his hand. He dared not approach the vessel again. It was repaired, yes, but the cost had been steep. Something dark now dwelled within it, something that belonged neither to the machine nor the Imperium. As he left the hangar, a thought haunted him. It wasn't just melancholy that weighed on him, but the realization that war wasn't the only horror. There were things hidden in the depths of metal and code, things that should never have been awakened. And as he reached the threshold, he heard it once more, a faint chuckle from the Thunderhawk, as if mocking him for daring to believe the ritual was truly over.